Hello students, once again we are here with one numerical problem for class 11th, and the chapter is some basic concept of chemistry and topic is empirical and molecular formula calculation. For this video lecture I took one solved example from NCERT pink exercise uh, in which problem is given like a compound in which three elements, that is number one hydrogen, number two carbon, and number three chlorines are given, and the mass percentage of hydrogen is 4.07%, for carbon it is 24.27%, and further for chlorine it is 71.65%. And the more important thing is that in this question molar mass of the compound is given, and on behalf of molar mass he can ask empirical formula, further he will go for molecular formula. So you can see in this question he is asking that you have to calculate empirical and molecular formula both with this concept. Suppose first we will go for empirical formula, and after calculating of empirical formula we have one jugaad like molecular formula further can be calculated as empirical formula multiplied by n. So one by one we will follow the step. Suppose we have four steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. For what? For empirical formula calculation. And for empirical formula our first step is number 1, percentage composition. If percentage composition is given then it's better, otherwise we will find by our concept which is based on percentage composition calculation. Number 2, consider percentage composition as gram. Number 3, mole calculation. How we can calculate mole? By dividing the given mass, and further in bottom side it is atomic mass of that particular element, and at last it is simplest ratio, and simplest ratio is nothing but it is empirical formula. So see one by one. Step 1, here three elements, carbon, hydrogen and chlorine. For carbon percentage composition is 24.27%. For hydrogen it is 4.07%, and for chlorine it is next 71.65%. So what is our next step? Step 2, I will consider this percentage composition as given mass, as gram. What is this? It is in gram. So nothing but it is 24.27 gram, same value. It is 4.07 gram, and next is 71.65 gram for chlorine. So our two step is clear. Step 1 for percentage composition, and step 2 for percentage composition I have to consider it in gram, okay, in given mass. In step 3 it is very important, because in step 3 I have to go for mole calculation. And how I can find mole? Simply in for mole calculation I have to use the formula in which further the given mass, further it will be divided by atomic mass. So in mole, the mole of carbon, the carbon mass is kitna? It is 24.27, and further it will be divided by 12. What is 12? 12 is atomic mass of carbon. 12 is what? 12 is atomic mass of carbon. So 24.27 divided by 12. Again I am repeating, this 24.27 is nothing but percentage composition of carbon, and I consider in step 2 this 24.27% as gram of carbon in 100 gram of the compound. So in step 3 this 24.27 gram is given mass of carbon, and by dividing atomic mass of carbon, that is 12, I will get 2.02. It is what? It is mole of carbon. In similar manner I can calculate mole for hydrogen and mole for chlorine. What is the mole for hydrogen? It is 4.07 gram, it is given mass, and further the atomic mass of hydrogen is 1. So 4.07 divided by 1, answer will be 4.07. And for chlorine, given mass is 71.65, and the atomic mass of chlorine is 35.5. So answer will be 2.01. So we completed our step 1, step 2 and step 3. Now it's time for simplest ratio calculation, and simplest ratio is nothing but it is empirical formula. So whatever the smallest value among these, this value I will use for next division. So 2.02 divided by 2.01, because 2.01 is smallest among these three values, and further 4.07 will be divided by 2.01, and 2.01 itself it will divide by 2.07. So answer is 1, 2 and 1. What is this? It is simplest ratio for carbon and for hydrogen and for chlorine, and simplest ratio is actually empirical formula. So empirical formula of the compound will be CH2Cl, because the simplest ratio value for carbon it is 1, for hydrogen it is 2, and for chlorine it is again 1. Now as I calculated empirical formula, my first duty is I have to calculate, I will go for empirical formula mass, abbreviated as EFM. What is EFM? Empirical formula mass. So for carbon I will use 12, and for hydrogen it is 1, because 2 hydrogen, that's why I multiplied by with 2, and next is chlorine, it is 35.5. So after adding this value I will get 49.5. What is 49.5? It is EFM, empirical formula mass. So till here I calculated number 1 empirical formula, that is CH2Cl for that compound, and number 2 EFM, that is empirical formula mass of that compound. Now next I have to calculate molecular formula of that compound, because in question it is already asked that we have to calculate empirical as well as molecular formula. So empirical formula when multiplied by N, it will give molecular formula. So what is empirical formula? CH2Cl. And what is N? How I will calculate N, and what is the process for calculation of N? N is nothing but a simple one factor for which I will use molar mass, again one formula, molar mass, and further it will be divided by empirical formula mass, EFM. And remember students, molar mass is already given in your solved example, that is 98.96. its molar mass is 98.96. 98.96 means what? 98.96 is molar mass of that compound, that organic compound. So molar mass is 98.96. it is already given in the problem, and it will be divided by empirical formula mass, that is how much? 49.5, for which it is mass of empirical formula, that is 49.5, and here it is 98.96, and the value of N is just around 2. It will be kitna? It will be 2. So further I will multiply this N, that is 2, with empirical formula. I will get molecular formula, and final value of molecular formula is C2H4Cl2, and empirical formula is what? CH2Cl. So I used in step 1 percentage composition. By considering percentage composition in gram, I made step 2, and for step 3 I divided that given mass with atomic mass, so that I can get the value of mole, and by getting the value of mole, and in last step for which I have to calculate for simplest ratio. So whatever the smallest value in all these, by dividing that factor I will get simplest ratio, and simplest ratio is nothing but it is empirical formula. What is this? It is empirical formula, and as calculated already calculated empirical formula, I will go for empirical formula mass, and by empirical formula I can calculate molecular formula by multiplying the factor N, and N is nothing but molar mass, which is already provided by the examiner in your solved example, or in your question, or in your numerical, and this molar mass is further will divided by empirical formula mass, so that the value of N it will be some whole number 1, 2, 3, 4, and by multiplying this you will get molecular formula. So it's all about empirical and molecular formula calculation. And so it's like any problem, suppose in your exam it is coming, you will able to solve it. So it's very simple concept, and also it is scoring, okay, so that you can score a very good marks in your exam using this concept, because its concept is very much interesting and easier also. So till then Further, I will again I will be here with one more video lecture or with one more concept. Till then, I would like to thank you for today's class. Thanks a lot.